Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and I hope you had a great holiday and New Year's. This is the first news video of 2022, and this past week was filled with news regarding an issue with the iPhone 13, which I meant to cover in the previous news video, but somehow skipped over. Also, details on the upcoming iPhone SE 3, iPhone 14, iPhone 15 even, Macs, and more. This is your news update for the week of January 2nd, 2022. And if you didn't watch last week's video, I've started to break the videos up with news at the beginning of the video and then rumors and upcoming products later on. That way, if you don't want to hear about upcoming products, don't want anything spoiled for you, or you just don't enjoy rumors overall, you can listen to up to that point and just have news, and I'll let you know when we'll talk about that. Now, the first thing is that bug I mentioned with iPhone 13. It seems that noise cancellation when placing a phone call isn't available. This is something that's on the iPhone 13 series only. 13, 13 mini, 13 Pro, and 13 Pro Max, and it's a known issue. The option isn't even there, and Apple will need to add this with a future software update. Why it was removed or not there to begin with has been a bit of a concern to people since they have the latest phone but don't have a feature they've had for a long time. So hopefully Apple will respond to this, as it seems to be more and more prevalent and getting more and more attention. So this is something I personally didn't notice, as I don't place a ton of phone calls, but quite a few people have messaged me and said, why is this option not there, or do you know about this bug? So hopefully Apple will take care of that very, very soon. Now, quite a few people expected iPhone 13 sales to be lower than previous years, but according to Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives, Apple sold over 40 million iPhone 13 models this year, 13, 13 mini, 13 Pro, and 13 Pro Max, which would be a holiday season record. And so we'll have to wait to see actual earnings from Apple if they actually did have a sales record, although they don't specify sales numbers anymore, but many people are still interested in iPhone 13 despite what people are saying. So they're selling quite well, and while they're not as exciting as maybe a full redesign, they definitely seem to be doing well. Today, Apple became the world's first $3 trillion company. As you can see in the Apple stock app, Reuters says Apple becomes first company to hit $3 trillion market value. And I remember right before they hit $1 trillion, everyone thought that was unbelievable. Now we're 3 times that. So they just continue to grow and grow and grow. Now, Foxconn, which produces iPhones around the world, recently shut down a plant temporarily in southern India. This was due to a protest over poor living and overall conditions. And if you search Google for the Foxconn shutdown, you can see tons of different articles about it. Apple responded to this, saying, following recent concerns about food safety and accommodation conditions at Foxconn, we dispatched independent auditors, an Apple spokesperson said. We found that some of the remote dormitory accommodations and dining rooms being used for employees do not meet our requirements, and we are working with the supplier to ensure a comprehensive set of corrective actions are rapidly implemented. Last year, there was a similar problem in a different plant. Hopefully, Apple resolves this quickly and keeps an eye on it to make sure that the workers have the best accommodations possible. There's not really a reason they shouldn't, so hopefully they'll get that taken care of very quickly. But if you're in that area and you're a viewer of this channel, I'd love to hear from you on your take from it in the comments below. Now, this past week, to celebrate Chinese New Year, Apple released special editions of AirPods Pro. You'll see it says AirPods Pro Tiger. It's available in Hong Kong and has a little picture of the tiger there. So they release those. They're available in limited supply, and you may or may not be able to get them depending on the country you're in, but they did release those. You can see the product here. It's just a little bit different to celebrate. They also released with Beats. The Beats Studio Buds now have a custom edition to celebrate the Lunar New Year. And so if we take a look at the post on Twitter that Beats by Dre did, you'll see it says, we're celebrating the Lunar New Year with our special editions Beats Studio Buds. As a tribute to the Year of the Tiger, the buds feature an all-red design with gold tiger print accents, out on January 1st. So those are available now as well, and should be just a nice little update if you're looking for something different. Now, for those of you wondering about iOS 15.3 Beta 2, many have been asking about this, and I did cover it in my follow-up that I put out yesterday, when to expect Beta 2. Well, based off of year over year, I took a look back over the past 3 years at what Apple had done with releases after the holiday. Apple has been on vacation for the holiday like many people, and 3 years ago, with iOS 12.1.3 Beta 4, Apple released that on January 10th, 2019. The following year, on January 14th, 2020, they released iOS 13.3.1 Beta 2, and last year, on January 13th, 2021, Apple released iOS 14.4 Beta 2. So based off of that, it looks like we have another week for the next beta. So typically, this is the week, not this week, but the following week is when they released the next betas. And typically, we see an update to the public by the end of the month. And based off of what we know with Apple working with the TSA to allow you to use digital ID on your phone, so we've got the Apple Digital ID in supporting states where you can use your iPhone as your license or ID, and they verify that with biometrics and more. You'll be able to use your watch or your iPhone to use it at a TSA checkpoint. Apparently, it's going to be tested at a couple different airports with supported states, and that's supposed to start in February. So that means we should have some sort of public release before then so that people have that option on their phone. So maybe by the end of the month, like they did last year, or early February is when I would expect iOS 15.3 to release to the public. And also, in a recent interview from Apple, they've talked about how AirPods have Bluetooth limitations for quality. Bluetooth has bandwidth limitations that don't really allow for lossless audio to be streamed over it. So they've talked about maybe working on these limitations, coming out with something new, and having lossless over wireless. So hopefully we see something like that in the future. And this leads me to the upcoming product section of the video. So it's rumored that Apple is working on AirPods Pro 2. We've long expected this, and according to Ming-Chi Kuo, he's saying that they'll feature not only a new design, but lossless audio support. This goes along with that recent interview I just mentioned, and maybe have a case with a built-in speaker to better locate them if you lose them. So that makes a lot of sense. We can locate the AirPods Pro, but it's just not very loud if you're trying to play audio through them to locate them. And so maybe a speaker on them makes a lot of sense so we can hear them better, but with additional upgrades to noise cancellation, lossless, and more. I would love to see Apple come out with maybe using a higher standard of Bluetooth or something along the lines of aptX to get higher quality out of AirPods. While they're pretty good, I think they could do a lot better, and I think they're looking at that to get the best sound. I often think that the AirPods 3 actually sound better than the AirPods Pro, but just lack that noise cancellation, so I can't wait to see that. Now, with the upcoming iPhone SE 3 or SE 5G, we're not sure what they're going to call it, Apple's expected to update this phone, the SE 2, to a new version. It's said to look similar. I've talked about this before, but we've had additional comments from Mark Gurman about this, and he typically doesn't make a comment unless he has a pretty solid source on this. And you'll see a lot of this news comes from him. And so with an iPhone SE, we would get 5G, a similar display, and Touch ID. I was really hoping for a redesign, but those looking for a larger phone will still have to opt for the iPhone 8 Plus if you still want Touch ID. So the SE 3 larger version is still rumored, but not until next year. Hopefully most people are wrong about this, and we see it very soon, as I think a lot of people would appreciate an updated version of the iPhone 8 Plus. I know a lot of people love Touch ID, maybe have an A15 Bionic in it with an upgraded camera. A lot of people would welcome that with HDR capability and more. So hopefully we see something like that very, very soon. Probably within the next few months we'll see that. Now, last week I did talk about the iPhone 14 and how we expect a few different changes with it. Mark Gurman is backing up a claim that some iPhone 14 models will do away with the notch and instead replace them with a hole punch display. We've heard this quite a bit about maybe the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max doing away with the notch and instead having a hole punch display like the Pixel or maybe the Samsung phones. So I personally like the hole punch display, but I know a lot of people don't really like it, but they've apparently figured out how to put Face ID under the display. So if they do that, I would welcome it. I always welcome more screen real estate, and then to get rid of the notch, while it's sort of a signature look and they've added it to the MacBook, it seems like they may get rid of it on the Pro models. So let me know what you think about that though. Do you prefer a notch or a hole punch display? Mark Gurman is backing that up, and also they're apparently expecting it to gain a periscope zoom lens, but with the iPhone 15. Apple's been working on this. We've seen the patents for this, and a periscope zoom is what we have in the S21 Ultra and the Pixel, and so they'd have a sideways camera with maybe a mirror or periscope that allows for a greater zoom range. So that apparently is in the works, but still not going to be this year. It will be next year, 2023, according to those in the know. And so many people are asking, why do you cover iPhone 14? It's 9 months away. Well, we know from the supply chain that Apple is already working on it, finalizing those designs. They work about 3 years out, and they have to ramp up production to make millions and millions of phones. So they're in the beginning stages of doing that, where they'll start producing them a few months before the final release, which is typically in September. So we know what these are going to look like typically from the supply chain. However, they can make last-minute changes if they find a problem. With upcoming iPads, it's said that they're going to gain wireless charging. This is something that I find a bit curious, and you'll see it won't rotate for me for some reason. It's on iPadOS 15.2, and rotation lock's not on, so it seems to be a bug. And I've noticed this issue on iPads, but it's not rotating. It does occasionally work for me, but it looks like the iPads coming out this year may have wireless charging. Now, whether or not that's maybe MagSafe or something different is hard to say. Maybe a stand that wirelessly charges. We had something like that back with WebOS devices when HP took over, or we could use this maybe like a Google Home or an Alexa device if it was on sort of a wireless charging pad. I would definitely welcome something like that, as I typically use wireless charging all of the time. So I would love to see that on an iPad. Now, whether or not that would be on the Air 5 or maybe the next generation iPad Pro, we'll have to wait and see. But to have that across all the line, I definitely think would be welcome. And I think a lot of people would appreciate that as long as it works well. Now, we've heard for a while that Apple is working on new displays. They haven't had a cinema display for quite some time. We just have Pro Display XDR. However, it's extremely expensive at about $5,000 and then another $1,000 for the stand. And you can even opt that up another $1,000 for a display that's matte. So instead of that, according to Mark Gurman, Apple is developing a new external display, which will also cost about half of what the current one does, which means about $2,500. While it's still expensive, it's definitely, I think, a move in the right direction, as the Pro Display XDR is great, but extremely expensive. Last year, Apple began the transition to their own silicon. Apple Silicon may be complete on all models by the time WWDC rolls around, according to Mark Gurman. We're still waiting for a few different Macs, and Gurman is also backing up the claims of a new MacBook Air design with an M2 chipset. So that 18-month cycle I talked about last week, where they'll update the chipset to something new every 18 months, he's saying the M2 would be a smaller update from M1 with the same 8-core CPU, but 9 or 10 GPU cores. So it would be a little bit of a bump, maybe more efficient as well. Mark Gurman is also saying Mac Pro is expected to be a smaller form factor, but have up to a 40-core CPU and 128-core GPU. Again, Mac Mini and a larger iMac are again backed up by Mark Gurman, where we would have similar sorts of options with an iMac or iMac Pro. So all of those things are really exciting. I can't wait for maybe a new Mac Pro, and it would of course be less upgradable than what we had before, since we have Apple's own silicon, unless they've come up with something else. With Apple Watch, Patently Apple recently found a patent that details a replacement of the digital crown, but with an optical sensor. So instead of using the digital crown to maybe go through your content or pressing it, you could just tap it. This has a few different advantages, some for Apple in manufacturing costs and machining, but also for the consumer with maybe better water resistance and dust resistance. And that sort of leads to what many have been saying, that we're going to get a ruggedized version of the Apple Watch this year that could be used for sports or maybe mountain climbing, maybe skiing, things like that, where it would be more durable in the event of maybe a crash in extreme weather. So that seems to make a lot of sense, maybe additional casing for extreme weather, and we could see something like that this year. Now, a new AR and VR headset is also expected in 2022, according to Gurman. He's probably one of the most excited people about AR and VR, and we've heard from him for quite some time that they're working on this. But he does warn it could be pushed back, as it has been before, according to many sources. And so Apple is working on it. We know that from many different job hirings where they have an initiative to maybe make a new interface for that. And so I can't wait to see what they have. Hopefully we see it this year. But either way, they're definitely still working on it. And so that's all the news for this past week, as well as some of the upcoming products. Let me know what you're looking most forward to in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.